All right, guys, so here's a baseline setup and adjustment guide for the 410 sprint cars in World of Outlaws Dirt Racing 24. This is kind of where they start you out with your settings when you go to a sprint car, and then I'm going to make all these adjustments, and we'll be back here in just a minute. I'll show you where my baseline's at. All right, guys, now here's where I basically start with the 410 sprints when I'm doing a setup, and it really depends on whether I'm going to a bigger track like, say, Eldora, Bristol, Williams Grove, longer, bigger tracks. I may take my wing angle up here over on the right hand side. I've got them both at 30 right now because I'm doing a setup actually for I-19 Speedway, which is a little track. So I've got my wing angle as high as it'll go on front and the back because I want as much downforce as I want. But if I go to a bigger track, I'll probably lay them down. Like, say, I'll probably start the wing angle, like, say, if I went to Bristol or some of these bigger tracks, I-84, I would probably lay the front wing angle down to like a 27, and I would lay the back wing angle down, I don't know, to like a 28, you know, somewhere around in there to get less drag and more speed. One other thing to think about in the sprint cars with these things is the left side weight. In these cars, you don't run as much left side weight, and the reason behind that is if you've ever been into sprint cars or know much about sprint cars, the wing on the top will actually put weight on the left side tires, like say through the corners, which will drive the left side tires in the ground, and so you don't need as much left side weight in a sprint car as you do, like say a dirt late model, because that wing actually acts as weight on the left side when they're going through the corner and it's catching air. It'll actually suck a sprint car down on the left side. It's kind of crazy, but anyways, that's just the way it goes. So that's why on the left side weight, unless you just have to, you know, you don't have to run nowhere near as much left side weight in these cars. All right, guys, so on the left front, on the torsion bar diameter, and it just acts like a spring rate on the sprint cars, the same as everything else. The more weight you put on the left front torsion bar diameter, or the bigger it gets, it makes the car freer getting into the corner, makes it looser getting into the corner, and of course the lower you go with it, it makes it tighter getting into the corner. So if you go down with this number right here, it'll make the car tighter getting into the corner, turning into the corner. If you put it up, you know, if you make it bigger, it'll make the car looser getting into the corner. The bigger you make the right front torsion bar, the tighter the car will get on the corner, get into the corner. The lower you got it will make it freer getting into the corner. Left rear, the torsion bar diameter will make it, the bigger you go with the torsion bar diameter on the left rear will make the car tighter on exit, but if you go down with it like it is right now, it'll make it freer on exit. And then on the right rear on the torsion bar diameter, if you go up on the torsion bar on the right rear, it'll make it looser off the corner and on the throttle. Like when you get into the throttle, it'll make the car looser. The bigger you go, and the smaller you go with the right rear torsion bar will make the car tighter when you get in the throttle or up off the corner. Torsion bars, I kind of look at them as an X, like the left front to the right rear, right front to left rear. If you do, it affects the car the same way on those corners, like the left front and the right rear. If you go negative on the torsion bar stop, or the less turns you have, let me say that, the less turns you have on the torsion bar, it makes the car tighter. Same thing on the right rear, the less turns you have on the torsion bar will make the car tighter. The more turns you put in on the left front and the right rear, the freer the car will get. And on the right front to left rear, it's kind of the opposite. The more turns you get in the right front and the left rear, the tighter the car will get. The less turns you get in the right front and the left rear will make the car freer. On the front shock bumps on both of them, it's the same way, and I think I've said this in my other videos, but both bumps kind of work the same way. Front, the higher you go with the shock bump on the front, the tighter the car will be on entry. The lower you go with the shock bump on the front, on both of them, the freer the car will get. And those affect entry main. The front shock bumps will mainly affect entry. The higher you go with both of them shock bumps make it tighter on exit. The lower you go with them, free it up on exit. So they kind of work in tandem, the front and the rear together. Both shock bumps do the same for the front on both sides and the same thing in the back on both sides. If that makes sense. Shock rebounds, it's a little trickier on the left front. The higher you go with the shock rebound on the left front, the tighter it will get on exit. And the lower you go with the shock bump on the left front, the looser it will get on exit. which is different than the right rear. So if you go up on your shock rebound on your right rear, it'll get looser on exit. If you go lower with your shock rebound on the right front, it'll get tighter on exit. The left rear rebound will get looser on entry the higher you go with it. The more you take out rebound in the left rear, the tighter it'll be on entry. So the higher you go, looser. Lower you go, tighter on the left rear rebound. The higher you go on the right rear rebound, the tighter it will get on exit, on entry. Sorry, I keep saying I get them mixed up. On entry. On entry, the right rear, if you go higher, will make it tighter. If you go lower on the shock rebound on the right rear, on entry, it'll make it looser. The tighter you'll get on corner entry. And then the tire pressure's kind of the same of everything else. You look at it as adding, say you're adding spring rate to that corner is more or less what you're doing. So like if you go up on tire pressure on the left front, it'll be looser on entry of the corner. If you go less with the tire pressure, it'll be tighter on the entry of corner. Right front tire pressure, the higher you go with it, the tighter it'll be on corner entry. The lower you go with it, the looser the car will be on corner entry. Left rear, the higher you go with the tire pressure on the left rear, the tighter you will be on exit. The lower you go with the left rear tire pressure, the freer you'll be on exit. On the right rear, same thing. The higher you go with it, the looser it'll be on exit and throttle. When you get to the throttle, it'll be freer, looser. The higher the tire pressure is, the lower the tire pressure is on the right rear, the tighter it'll be on throttle or up off the corner. And then tire staggers the same way. It's just how much bigger your right rear is than your left rear. So if your right rear is, say, the same size as your left rear, you got 0 stagger, right? And the car will straight. But if your right rear is 5 inches bigger than your left rear, it's just like I've said before, rolling a cup on a table. The right rear will it'll want to turn. And so that's what stagger is you're trying to make the right rear bigger than the left rear to help the car turn through the corner. Help it rotate, I guess you could say. Wing angle's pretty simple. The wing angle on the front, and I said this on the other cars too, it's kind of works the same deal. The wing angle on the front's almost like the camber setting in the other cars. Like the more wing angle you get in it, the more you can feel the front end. The more you take the wing angle out of these cars, the less you can feel the front end with the steering wheel. So you got to find a good happy medium there, or what feels good to you with having the least amount of angle, but still feeling the front end good and having speed. So it just depends on where you're at, but generally you'll be around 27 on the big tracks and 30 on all the small tracks. Just set it to 30 and be done with it. On the bigger tracks, go to 27. And then if you need a little help, go to 28. You know what I'm saying? Left weight, the higher you go with it, higher you go with the percentage, is the looser the car will feel. The lower you come with the left side weight, the tighter the car will feel. Cross weight's about the same as everybody else. The more cross weight you got, which is from the right front to the left rear, the more forward traction you got and the tighter the car will feel. The less cross weight you got, the less forward traction you have and the looser the car will feel. The lower in the front, your tube height, the lower you get with the tube height, the freer the car will feel. The higher you get with the tube height, the tighter the car will feel. Wing angle, it's the same as the back. At a small track, just put it at 30 and forget about it. Bigger tracks, Volusia, some of the bigger tracks, you might want to back off of it a little bit, 27 degrees or whatever. Wing position is where the wing is at from front to back on your car. And that's something that I would just set it somewhere where it's easy for you to adjust while you're racing. I usually set mine at 0, and then I'll play around with it during the feature very little. Left rear wheel spacing is just like adding weight to the car, the same as the tires or the same as the spring rate. If you get the left rear wheel spacer out on the left rear, it'll make the car tighter. It generally just makes the car overall tighter. The less left rear wheel spacing you have, the freer the car will feel. Right rear wheel spacing, the more right rear wheel spacing you have out there, the freer the car will feel. The less right rear wheel spacing you have, the tighter the car will feel. And again, on the tube height on the rear, the best I can figure, the lower you get the tube height, the looser the car feels. And the higher you get the tube height, the tighter the car will feel. Rear weight's kind of tricky. On a small track like the one I'm getting ready to run, I-19, the higher you go with the rear weight or forward traction you should have. And I found that it kind of frees the car up. It'll help free the car up getting in to the corner, the more rear weight you have. On a bigger track where you're running more speed in the corners, it'll definitely free you up. But I try to use it on a small track to help whip the car around if I need it to, just, to kind of hug the bottom. So the more you go up with that, just think it's more traction, but it frees the car up, and the less you go with it, the less traction you'll have, and the car will be tighter. First wheel lock, you all know what that is. It's how far you turn your steering wheel to lock the lock, whether it's 30 degrees or whatever. The steering offset is if the car is wanting to dart one way or the other, the steering offset will help center the steering wheel and take any pull out of the car, you say, if it's pulling right or pulling left. Tire compound, y'all know that, tire soft. And then the rear and gear ratio, of course, the higher you go with it, the more gear you got. The lower you go with it, the less gear you got. So you just play with that until you get to where you want to go. Guys, I hope this has helped. If it has, please consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.